What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with reactions to the classics. Today we got a Chicago Terry Kath led top 10 brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Joseph, also known as JSB around these parts. Thank you, Joseph. Appreciate everything you bring. Appreciate all the things that the patrons bring. We would not be able to do it without you. We put up things every single day. If you'd like to consider supporting us, check out the Patreon link below, the patron link on the end screen. So we do have some Chicago stuff up. I have a Chicago 5 full album reaction. I'll link it below that I did for another one of our patrons, Trucker Kev, who loves these guys, and Terry Kath in particular. And then we have a top 10 that we did for one of our former patrons, Rich, a few years ago for Chicago that's up. But, Joseph has some stuff to talk about here, so I'll just let his words take over before we start the countdown. He says it's been a good while since Rich did a Chicago top 10, which understandably focused on the more commercial side of the band, even though it also kept strictly to the Terry Kath era. This list is also Terry Kath era focused, but hones in further to the man himself, the soul of the band and its de facto leader. Robert Lamb has often said, quote, "The band died when Terry died," end quote. So a whopping 45 years after that tragic/stupid/tragically stupid event, it seems a fitting time to pay tribute. As well as being an underrated guitar player, he remains sorely underrated on two other scores as a vocalist and a songwriter, and those aspects of his legacy are the focus of this list. Naturally, his guitar playing is prominently featured as well, but that's a given. While he contributed at least one composition to each of the 9 Chicago studio albums he made, none of those tracks were ever released as singles, though many of them were used as B-sides, and like 99% of Chicago's non-top 40 material has subsequently fallen into near obscurity. Similarly, his soulful vocals, which did at least get used on some big singles, Make Me Smile and Color My World in particular, are often praised by other members of the band, but are rarely talked about outside the core group of early Chicago obsessives. Of course, as I've noted before, he's hardly the only member of Chicago who, despite or perhaps because of their massive success, has their contributions to popular music overlooked. Whether it be the songwriting of Robert Lamb or that in Peter Cetera, bass, and Danny Seraphin drums, they possess one of rock's greatest ever rhythm sections. Also, for some reason that will become clear, the natural first and last songs on the list happen to be the opening track of the first Terry era album and the closer of his last, so it made sense to simply present the full list chronologically rather than 10 to 1. So just remember that's chronologically. Don't get all bent out of shape at what's 1 and 10. All tracks are produced by James William Garcio, who was their first manager and producer throughout the Kath era. They finally sacked him towards the end of the making of Chicago 11. It's hard to know how different the rest of their career may have been had they suffered neither or only one or the other of those significant changes. So if you've never been with this before, the music will not be in the video, but it will be at a Vimeo link below. Thanks again for curating this list, Joseph. All right, we're going to kick it off below. You see it, Introduction from the Chicago Transit Authority album, 1969, written by Terry, lead vocals by Terry. Joseph says, as the title suggests, it's the sound of the band truly setting out its all. It's the old first song on the first album syndrome, of which we so often speak of, we do on this channel. But by the end of this, you know exactly what this band is about. It's a job well done. Everyone's at the top of their game here, and 3 members get solos in Pankow, Lachlan, and of course, Terry himself. Great as those are, it's actually the ensemble playing that takes it over the top. The horn break after the solo section is particularly sublime. So I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Let's get it. Introduction. What a brilliant track to be the first song that anyone ever heard, right? It is an introduction, just a really clever way of doing things, There's not a lot of vocals on it. I mean, there's 3 verses and some repeating on the chorus, but it's showcasing their instrumentation, right? I mean, it's to the fans. They're like, hey there, everybody, please don't romp or roam. We're a little nervous because we're so far from home. So this is what we do. Sit back and let us groove and let us work on you. Yeah, we've all spent years preparing before this group was born. With heaven's help, it blended. And we do thank the Lord. Then he gets into the chorus again. And then the instrumental solos, right, which really tells you what's going on. You got, I mentioned it during the reaction, you got the brass solo followed up with the trombone by James, Lee's trumpet, Terry's guitar, and Danny's drums. So it's like, here's who we are. If you like this song, you're going to like us. If you don't like this song, you probably don't need to come on the journey with us. So a brilliant way to start your career. Next up from Chicago 2, we have The Road. Chicago 2 was in 1970. Written by Kath, lead vocals by Peter Cetera. Lyrically dated, undoubtedly, is what Joseph says. Hey, this was the era of free love, so it gets a pass on that score. With a great vocal from Peter, who in the early days of the band wasn't one of the writers, but obviously had too good a voice to waste, so would take the occasional lead on tracks penned by other band members. In fact, this album closes with his first ever writing contribution, Where Do We Go From Here?, which he largely wrote while in the hospital recovering from the broken jaw incurred at Dodger Stadium when he was set up upon by Marines who didn't like a long-haired hippie and Chicago Cubs supporter being in their stand. As a result, The Road, recorded soon after, is the first time we hear him singing in his new style with jaw clenched that remains how he sings to this day. I say, that was some great trivia there by Joseph. The Road. Once again, the star of this is definitely the brass section. Peter's vocals are fine. And the subject matter, it's very simple. It's a one-night stand, man. Just come over. Let's not get into talking too much or into too much deep stuff. Let's just have a good time, and then we can still be free, right? So as Joseph said at the start, free love, but enjoy listening to that early vocal by Cetera. We're going to stay on that Chicago 2 album from 1970 for our third track here, In the Country, written by Terry. Lead vocals Terry with the aforementioned Peter Cetera. Joseph said, even in the early days of their fame, this is an early indicator that Terry was never fully comfortable with the rock and roll lifestyle and sought refuge in nature, something he would have little time to do in his remaining years on the planet. More of a guitar showcase than many other tunes in this list, which is appropriate since that was his other natural habitat, and great call and response vocals with Peter as the song moves on to. In the Country, the brass section comes in towards the end, but the stars of this are the guitar playing from Terry and the bass work from Cetera. And then their vocals, right, were great. The call and response and well-written song, man. 7 verses, like Terry brings it on this. It's just basically saying eventually he gets the fact of like he's going to be with this girl and wants to just go live out in the country away from all this. Like verse 7, let's get out, hit there, let's get funky. Come on, people. Yeah, let's be free. Let's give up lies. You live in the country. Give up greed, you and me. Race and sin, you got to be free. Yeah, come on now, you got to be free. So, dealing with fame now that they had blown up from the first album and just all of those things and wanted to get away from it where he could just be himself and all that pressure. I could see that. So great track. All right, next up, our fourth track comes from Chicago 3 in 1971. Loneliness is Just a Word, written by Robert Lamb, sung by Terry. One of their jazzier efforts, Joseph says, Lamb was a very unselfish writer who would write to the strengths of the band. So despite his own vocal prowess, he often wrote with Peter and or Terry's voices in mind. And similarly, the adage that a keyboard player's songs will be keyboard heavy was often not the case either. 25 or 6-4 being the most obvious example. So it's nice to have him actually show off his chops for a change with an impressive organ solo mid-song here. Nevertheless, it's Terry doing his best, quote, white Ray Charles soulful stylings that earned this track its spot on the list. All right, Loneliness is Just a Word. So really well done there. Yeah, that organ solo was fantastic. And I mean, Terry's just singing about the fact that this girl's gone. Like, you don't know how bad it's been since you've been gone. Let me tell you how bad it's been since you've been gone. People speak, but I don't hear. That things all around seem so unclear. I don't know. And so I just thought it was a really well written song by Robert, and just, you felt it from Terry, man. You felt the pain. We're going to stay on the Chicago 3 album from 1971. I Don't Want Your Money, written by Terry and Robert, lead vocals by Robert. Joseph said, after what I just said about Lamb, here he is taking a lead vocal on a song that sounds made for Terry, to the point that some insist it is Terry on vocals, and a rare songwriting collaboration, very uncharacteristic of the early days of the band. One of the most potent horn and guitar-driven songs in the Chicago catalog. Boy, that's a broad statement, or that's a bold statement. Not sure that the needless studio chatter at the end, which closed side 1, warranted being left in, but it's a very minor quibble. All right. I Don't Want Your Money. I think definitely the horn section of the guitar is what saves the song for. It's the first song I don't really care for. I don't care for the vocal performance. I'm definitely not a Chicago expert. It doesn't sound to me like Terry on this. I mean, I know it's Robert Lamb, but Joseph said a lot of people swear it's Terry. But hey, man, I did enjoy the instrumentation on it. Next up, we're moving to Chicago 7 in 1974. We got Song of the Evergreens, written by Terry. Lead vocals Lee Laughlin. Joseph says most Chicago albums, even in the early days, featured a hornless track or two. This one allows trumpeter Lee Laughlin, how am I saying his name? Laughlin? It's a weird name. To take his first ever lead vocal. In the pre-internet days, many fans always assumed it was Terry singing, and you can understand why. The best description I've seen of Lee's vocal style is Terry with the head cold. As within the country, this demonstrates Terry's connection with nature, and the absence of horns allows some wailing guitar to come to the forefront at the song's conclusion. More of that in a couple songs' time. All right. Song of the Evergreens. I thought Lee sounded good on there. Almost sounded like a little vocal treatment on him, maybe There wasn't, but it was nice to hear something without horns. Nothing against the horns and the brass for all you Chicago lovers, and for Trey who would freak out over that because he loves the brass. But I did like to hear that. I thought it sounded really good. And snow at the end. I'm sure it's snow, right? They're just talking about being out in the nature and the snow. But back in the 70s, somebody might have thought something else with the snow. But I thought that was well done. Now, not to be mistaken for one of my favorite songs ever, "Wish You Were Here" by Pink Floyd. We got "Wish You Were Here," also from Chicago 7 in 1974. Written by Peter, lead vocals by Terry with Peter. The token big hit on this list is what Joseph says. Of course, while most acts who had a song hit 11 in the 70s, think Reeling in the Years, Listen to the Music, Carry On Wayward Son, Lido Shuffle, etc., would rank it as one of their biggest songs. Chicago's massive commercial success leads to different measures, and this is only their 22nd highest charting single. I'm not sure a band of Chicago's experience would really record a backing track in the wrong key for the song's writer to sing, or not simply re-record it if they had. But this is the only Peter Cetera written song that he didn't take lead on. So I guess it could be true. And I found a little bit just their producer, James, played guitar in the recording. The instrumental track for the song had been recorded before Cetera realized it was too low for him to sing, so Kath performed the lead vocal instead. The Beach Boys, Al Jardine, Carl Wilson, and Dennis Wilson guested as backing vocalists. The Beach Boys collaboration with Chicago continued in 1975 when the two bands teamed up for the Beachago tour, which I really wouldn't see those two bands together, but I mean, it had to be a great watch. "Wishing You Were Here." Man, the harmonies on that, the Beach Boys, Dennis and Carl Wilson, Al Jardine, Cetera coming in for part of it, Terry singing. That was a really good song. Basically, I think it's about life on the road, right? Wishing you were here. I'm making the sacrifice. I got to do what I can do. But the harmony runs on there. And the instrumentation actually took a back seat a little bit on this one for the vocals. And I think that was a really good thing, man. That song was great. All right, next up, we have almost a 7.5 minute song, "Oh, Thank You, Great Spirit," from Chicago 8 in 1975, written by Terry, lead vocals by Terry. Joseph says the epic of this list, and a true RTTC registered trademark alert, "Journey of a Tune." I used to say that all the time. Then you guys broke me of it because you pointed it out. Another hornless number that showcases both Kath's acoustic and electric skills, as well as heavily featuring the band's newest member, who had already guested on their previous two albums, including on "Wishing You Were Here." Percussionist, I think you just put this in here to throw me off, Joseph. Ladir de Oliveira. Sure. The climactic solo is one of Terry's finest moments in the studio in my book. And a lot of people say this is a tribute that Terry wrote to the late, great Jimi Hendrix, whom apparently they opened up for some of his shows. And obviously he was friends with Terry. So, all right, let's check it out. "Oh, Thank You, Great Spirit." I can definitely see how this is a Hendrix tribute. It probably is with the lyrics. Not a ton of lyrics in here, but really well sung. But man, the guitar work was the absolute superstar here. Keyboards were nice as well, low key, man. But the guitar was fantastic, and it needs to be. If it really is a Hendrix tribute, then it definitely needs to be. But man, that was a maestro class in guitar playing. So definitely going to end up on my favorite or honorable mention list. Next up, we have "Mississippi Delta City Blues" from Chicago 11 in 1977, written by Terry, lead vocals by Terry. Joseph says the band resurrected this tune just in time to get it on a studio album before Terry passed. Of course, they couldn't have known that at the time. Originally recorded way back in the Chicago 5 sessions, and in my humble opinion, definitely deserved a slot on that release, Joseph says, and did see the light of day in a live version on 1972's Live in Japan, an album that wouldn't be released outside of Asia until the 90s. It was a fitting opener and is a tighter arrangement than the earlier version, so it was worth the wait getting it onto a studio album. "Mississippi Delta City Blues." Just a good jam, man, right? The horns, everything, man. Terry sounds great. I think, I mean, the song's about it. Basically, the girl left him, but he kind of hides it when he's around people. He smiles and plays that it's all good, but he's dreading going home and looking in that mirror, knowing that he's all alone. So, I thought it was really well done, but just a nice, like I said, a jam feel to it. And now we're up to our final song, although we're going to go with "The Little One Suite." So we got "The Inner Struggles of a Man," the prelude to "Little One," and "Little One." "The Inner Struggles of a Man" was written by Dominic Frontieri. It's an instrumental. The prelude, "Little One," and "Little One" written by Danny Serafin and David Hawk Lewinsky. Lead vocals by Terry. Joseph says, again, nobody could have had a clue just how much more poignant this closing suite would prove to be a mere 4 months after its release. It was already an emotionally rich track, coming from the pen of a guilt-ridden, largely absentee father, drummer Danny Serafin, and sung by Terry as though directly to his own young daughter, who would never have a chance to know him and would soon have a stepdad in the form of a struggling actor by the name of Kiefer Sutherland. That's another story. Wow, I didn't know that. In his autobiography, Street Player, My Chicago Story, Danny notes that this track began life when he took his daughter, Chrissy, to Paris on a promotional tour. He said, "One morning I sat in silence staring at her. She slept in her bed. A ray of sunlight was shining through the window and falling across her face. She looked like an angel. I sat down and came up with the lyrics for Little One. I wanted to express the emotions I was never able to convey to her as I wrestled with the guilt for not being there for her and Danielle as a full-time father. My girls love me, but we spent a great deal of time apart from each other. I poured my heart and soul into the lyrics. Upon returning to California, I gave my lyrics to Hawk. We got together in my studio and hashed out the music." Joseph says there's no mention of whose idea it was to bring Frontiere to provide the introduction and orchestration. Most likely it was Garcia's, but it was an inspired one. No Chicago track since would stretch out with the level of inventiveness witnessed here, a fitting in indeed to the Kath and Garcia era, though the 3.5-minute single edit was a relatively poor singles chart showing for them stalling at 44. It's because it's 9 minutes long, right? You can't have it down. You can't edit that thing down that far, but all right. Let's finish this off. All right, Little One, Sweet. And I know that this was just chronologically in order here for Joseph, but it was a really good way to finish this thing out. I thought Terry sounded fantastic. And the instrumental at the start was really nice. It's a really dialed back, laid back, beautiful piece of music. And then you get the prelude, which is really could have just been part of the song, right? Just a few lyrics describing that incident that we talked about in the beginning. I said he was looking at his daughter in the sun and all of that good stuff. And then the song Little One itself, just really, really well done. Just singing to his daughter, right? Telling her, look, I want to be here for you. And, I lead this tough life on the road, but someday you're going to have your own kid. You're going to be there for them too. And you just say the word, Dad'll make it better, man. And I miss those days with both of my kids where that was actually where you could actually do that, man. Parents, if you got young kids, enjoy it while you can, because you can't fix everything when they get older, man, no matter how much you want to try. Now, sometimes you can't when they're younger, but it's a whole lot easier. But fantastic way to finish this off. Which will bring me to my favorite tracks. Enjoyed all of these. For the most part, was one song maybe I didn't care for too much, but I mean, it's pretty good batting average in 10 songs. So my honorable mentions, the first song, Introduction, just because I thought it was a fantastic way and clever way to introduce yourself to the world. It was really well done. Also going with Oh Thank You, Great Spirit, the fantastic guitar from Kath on there. Probably the tribute to Hendrix. My favorite is going to be In the Country with Terry, with Peter, and they're kind of coming in on the call and response. The Wishing You Were Here with Terry and Peter and the Beach Boys, Dennis and Carl Wilson and Al Jardine at least on there. And then also this last one, Little One, Sweet, I thought was fantastic. So let me know what you thought of this list below. What were your favorites? What else would you have put on there? Keeping in mind the parameters of Terry Kath being the leader, either through writing it or lead vocalist or both, and that they were, not the hits here. So let me know what you think of this. Thank you, Joseph, for curating this list. I know that was not an easy thing. And until next time, guys, I will see you.